Good morning, dear friends. Am I heard out there in the world? Yay. It's Sunday, July the 12th, 2020 of the year of COVID-19. We're gathering together in this ancient way through this strange, remarkable medium. Hello to those of you joining us on Facebook and YouTube now and recorded in the future. Hello to those of you on Zoom that I get to have relationship with right here on my screen. I am so glad you have come this morning. I'm glad we're all well enough to make our way to our computers. I'm Robert Beatty. I'm coming to you from Eastern Beaverton, Oregon, west coast of the United States. Continent North America, planet Earth, galaxy the Milky Way, one of hundreds and hundreds of billions of galaxies. And here we are. This comes under the auspices of the Portland Insight Meditation Community, which really has been growing since 1979 when I started teaching in Portland. We have a beautiful meditation center, which is over about 12 miles to my east. And we're not going to it right now because of obvious reasons. But we will. And this pandemic will probably come somehow to a whimpering end, I hope. Maybe better than that. And then there will be the next one and the next everything. So it really behooves us to practice because as my friend Eric Kolvig, who I haven't heard from in years, I should look him up, a meditation teacher, Dharma teacher, said something that I found very helpful many times, which is samsara is broken and there's no fixing it. Samsara is this world of birth and death, sickness, old age, decay. Things are always so unstable and changing. And so among the purposes of our meditation is to learn how to surf on all this change, how to actually how to live happily and relatively contentedly in the midst of everything. So our procedure will be a poem, singing the Refuges, a little more extended sit than during the week. Then Jim will do some movement, and then I will be sharing a Dharma talk on skillful effort today. I want to begin with this poem. I haven't read it in a long time. It's called Aimless Love, and it's by Billy Collins. And I'm only going to read it once because it's kind of lengthy. But I hear it as a plea, to be mindful in every activity, and with mindfulness comes love. They're really synonyms. This morning, as I walked along the lakeshore, I fell in love with a wren. And later in the day, with a mouse the cat had dropped under the dining room table. In the shadows of an autumn evening, I fell for a seamstress still at her machine in the tailor's window, and later for a bowl of broth, steam rising like smoke from a naval battle. This is the best kind of love, I thought, without recompense, without gifts or unkind words, without suspicion or silence on the telephone. The love of the chestnut, the jazz cap and one hand on the wheel. No lust, no slam of the door. The love of the miniature orange tree, the clean white shirt, the hot evening shower, the highway that cuts across Florida. No waiting, no huffiness or rancor. Just a twinge every now and then for the wren who had built her nest on a low branch overhanging the water, and for the dead mouse still dressed in its light brown suit. But my heart is always propped up in a field on its tripod ready for the next arrow. After I carried the mouse by the tail to a pile of leaves in the woods, I found myself standing at the bathroom sink, gazing down affectionately at the soap. I found myself standing at the bathroom sink, gazing down affectionately at the soap, so patient and soluble, so at home in its pale green soap dish. I could feel myself falling again as I felt its turning in my wet hands and caught the scent of lavender and stone. In a world of constant utter change, in what can we take refuge? Well, for about 2,600 years, we've been reminded / taught, take refuge in being awake, taking refuge in that which is awake. Take refuge in the Buddha. And with that awakeness, what do we discover? We discover the Dharma. We discover the way things actually are. And it is such a relief when our meditation becomes really, I want to see how things really are. I want to understand it really like it is, and to let go of the fantasies and hopes and fears. And I take refuge in the Sangha, in the community of beings who down through time have actually practiced, who have escaped from the the trances of their particular time. The trance of the self, the trance of nationality, the trances of race, and discovered what they really were, what we really are. It's a high ambition, isn't it? And of course, it doesn't have to be the Buddha. Buddha is just a name. That beautiful, I do something sometimes when we used to teach in the center. We have a gorgeous Buddha that I bought at a roadside stand in Bali for $80. That big, incredible Buddha. It did cost hundreds of dollars to ship it home, but that was a different story. Anyway, sometimes I like to get up and knock on it and say, this is a piece of wood. It's no more sacred than the pencil you're holding. But it does stand for something. And as Joseph Campbell said, keep your symbols transparent to the transcendent. Don't get stuck on the symbol. So the symbol could be Kuan Yin or Mary or Jesus, Yahweh. It always stands for the same thing, though. That which we truly are. So, please join in as you wish. Think about the words. What do you really mean by them? I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. The foundational refuge of a practice, of a life, and a way of being. So let's sit. Sometimes I playfully say, let's sit and do nothing. But that's quite an achievement, to do nothing. But on the way to doing nothing, we have doing some things that are very beneficial. The practice of restraining unskillful, unwholesome states. And once they're restrained, of keeping them restrained. The path of bringing into being, or keeping them restrained, bringing into being wholesome states, and then once they're in being, keeping them going. Mindfulness and concentration are two core, fundamental, wholesome qualities that are worth cultivating. And we can very simply use mindfulness of in-breathing and out-breathing. Perfect exercises for strengthening concentration, the ability to stay with one object and not waver, and mindfulness, the capacity of knowing what is happening. It can be such a sweet coming home, and becomes that after a while. Breathing in and breathing out. Each breath similar to the one before, but not identical. And you'll notice it doesn't take any thinking. It doesn't take any analysis to abide in the sensations of breathing. It's just what's happening. When one wants to travel through the deep forest or uncharted ocean, one sets a course. Use a compass, a gyrocompass, a global positioning device. This is the direction I want to go. Choosing that direction makes any changing from that direction visible. And it's the same with the intention to be awake to everything that is. We chart a course. My intention for this while is to be resident, to be awake and present in the actual experience of breathing in and breathing out, which exists only now. And that then makes visible the 5 hindrances, the desires and the resistances and resentments, disliking. It makes visible restlessness, agitation, and worry, and doubt, and sloth and torpor. It helps awareness develop of the emotions. In fact, the entirety of this that we each take to be I, me, and mine is moment by moment illuminated, and its impersonality becomes more obvious. Of course, a lot of what we encounter is our personality, our unfinishedness, the results of our traumas, our emotional nature. We don't have to get rid of any of that. It's all naturally arising and passing away. And so we begin choosing moments of seeing it and letting it go and letting it extinguish, whatever it is. Coming home again and again and again to the actual sensations of breathing. It is our pathway home. Come home to breathing in, to these sensations right now, and breathing out. Very kindly, gently, no violence. One of the discoveries that comes more and more clear is that there really is only now. There is the now of this moment of inbreathing now. There is the now of this moment of outbreathing. There is the now of this pain in the body or this pleasure in the body. And it's not that it's a metaphor, it's that all that exists is now. The past and future exist as ideas, but they exist in the mind now. This is part of how it is so restful. Even though it feels like work, it is so restful to sit in meditation. Because we can let down all the effort to make things be different than they are. In attending to breathing, we can become, with great gentleness, more and more precise, more thorough, more intimate. What is that moment where the breath begins? Is it noticeable? What happens when I somehow become more and more intimate with the rising of the chest and abdomen or the sensations at the nostrils? Not to get something, but to simply be oriented. There comes a moment when breathing in is reaching completion. And there's deceleration. Can you notice that? And we can be intimate with the decline of the breath. All of this as a training strategy for honing the precision and sharpness of mindfulness and concentration and the other wholesome mental factors. Again and again, we awaken in the present moment. This moment is like this. It's become kind of a cliche, it's like this. But in this context, it is a radical statement. So this is how it is to sit here in the company of my friends on this Sunday morning. It's like this. We awaken endlessly, or countless times, in the midst of a thought or a mood. we have an opportunity to restrain it, to not feed it, to let it starve. So the 5 hindrances: desire, aversion, restlessness, agitation, worry, sloth and torpor, dullness and doubt, they all arise at their appointed moments. But then if we don't respond to them, they pass away. What is the nature of your experience right now? In particular, the mind. Is it calm and quiet, or restless and agitated? Or somewhere in between? Is it very curious about the meditation object, the breath, and other phenomena, or is it bored? Resting back into this moment. Examining the large view, where there is awareness, and in awareness that there exists the entire body. Feet, legs, hands, back, face. And then there's the realm of the mind, of thoughts, emotions, memories, plans. Lots happening there too, perhaps. Maybe a little. Maybe this is a moment of great ease and concentration. Delight in that. Or maybe there's a song running around in your head that won't stop, or some obsessive worry. There is an end to all obsessions. Our task, our capacity is to speed that process along. There might be some scent, residual taste. We each sit here at the absolute center of the universe, our universe. Let us set ourselves free from identifying with the details. And please now let us notice any stiffness, any tightness in the body. And then notice the intention, and then let ourselves stretch. Let the body stretch a bit. Very slowly. Paying close attention to sensations. Let's let go of the notion that meditation is something that I do when I'm sitting on my pillow in my meditation room. Meditation is something, as in that poem at the beginning, that we do at every moment. Walking into the grocery store, mindful. Putting the toast in the toaster, mindful. Taking out the trash, mindful walking. Turning on the computer, mindful. And now please let us become aware of the eyes and their beautiful smooth sockets. And then do the work of opening them, noticing it does take some effort to lift the eyelids. And then something pretty cool happens, seeing. Little postage stamps filled with people that I mostly recognize. And that recognition comes in the form of quick snippets of memory, of interaction, or seeing here. Entering into our relationships more and more mindfully, more and more recognizing the preciousness of them. Because they are all absolutely impermanent. I guess I'll do the announcements. I get tired of the announcements. But you do too, I'll bet. But they're important. Later this month, I'll let Jim give you the date. He's doing a Qigong retreat, and on the 1st of August, Candle Summers and I'm introducing Summers to PIMC. So she did one morning already. Doing a little more, a half-day retreat basically. Sitting and walking and some sort of traditional teachings from the Buddha, from Candle. And I want to invite you to practice your delicious capacity of generosity, and to reflect upon the importance of these broadcasts. And I hear so many people say how much they're useful to them, and to consider participating in the financial well-being of PIMC. which you can do by going to the website and finding the link for this Sunday morning if you want to earmark it specifically for that. All the money is pooled. It doesn't, that which is donated for this isn't somehow reserved for this. But it does help us to know where the viewership and donations are coming from. I'm not exactly sure how it helps us, but that's what they say. I am not a bookkeeper or an accountant. That is not my thing. Anyway, you can have fun with generosity. And, I had a lovely generosity moment yesterday I can share with you. I was coming out of Fred Meyer, and I had just bought takeout food next door at the Hero to go. I'd spent $20 on takeout food, and this very disheveled. He looked like he just got, I don't know, he was dirty, and he spoke almost no English, and he let me know he was from Vietnam, and that touched me. And I told him I don't have any cash, and he said ATM and pointed at the ATM. And I said okay, and I went, and he pointed at $40, and I said okay. And he took that. He was so happy. And I don't know. He was pretty run down. He probably went off and drank most of it. I don't know. But that's not my issue. My issue is, can I share? And what delight. I mean, now I'm thinking of it again. I feel a little teary. And here's this little guy, short, very worn, like old for his years. And whatever the case, he got some of what he wanted or needed for that few hours right then. And it didn't affect me. I just spent $20 on dinner. And there's so many opportunities that come along. And I could have said, no, you can't have $40. You could have $5. But why not? Now, of course, not everyone has that capability. You know, it might have been $5 would have been a lot. Then give your $5 or none. Even just paying attention to the person and saying, I'm sorry, I can't. That's also a gift. So this practice of generosity is really important and really fun. There's so many ways to open this frightened, tight little fist And in these times, the true uncertainty of things is more apparent to us, and it's helpful to me to be practicing being generous. So I invite you to visit the website and become a monthly donor. Particularly, that really is helpful because then we can count on that. And I really do hope there's a day when we get to open again. In fact, I'm toying with the idea of a Sunday morning, one of these, going ahead of time and putting measuring out and putting little bits of lime, or somehow marking the grass, and doing a meeting in the yard at PIMC. So maybe we'll do that when the weather gets a little more stable. Okay, I'm going to bow out, give Jim the helm. Mention the date of your class, Jim.
Yes, my Qigong workshop is on the 18th of July, the third Saturday of the month. I'm trying to keep to that rhythm and make it a little more predictable. So if you'd like to join me for a little mindful movement, question might come up, why do we spend time with this mindful movement as part of our practice? It's part of the transition from moving from formal sitting to whatever action we take following our coming together here, whatever our next step is, uh, it's going to involve a relationship with our body. We're going to be walking or driving or eating or whatever, sitting and reading. But what is our relationship with our body? And when we're not mindful of that relationship, often stress develops. So we need a dipstick to figure out, what's our relationship with our body right now. So we could start with the upper part of the body and turn the chin over to one shoulder, bring it down to the chest, and then over to the other shoulder. And is there a lot of tightness? We just bring our attention to the movement across from one side to the other. Is there resistance? Is there a little achiness? Is there stiffness? Or is it really smooth and open? So our relationship to our body may have been restricted by the notion of sitting absolutely still for meditation for 40 minutes. And that may have unconsciously created some tension. Now we loosen that up, lifting the chin and dropping it down. Is there resistance in those muscles, in those tendons, in the vertebrae? Now we move very slowly because that's part of our relationship with our body. We're pushing it a lot most of the day, getting it here and getting it there and getting it to do what we want on a more superficial level of our desires. But we want to pause and recognize the service that this body is doing and bringing mindfulness and love to reaching out with one arm and just extending it and realizing how many muscles and bones and tendons go into a simple reach. And then with the other hand, reach out. But to bring some relief and some enlivenment to this, we could turn it into a little game and do some dog paddling. And then feel how the hips got into it. As the hand moves forward, the hips turn. And then as the hips turn, the feet change their relationship with the floor below us. So just creating a game, we can create a flow of relaxation. And be aware of all the different places the body is saying, thank you. Oh yeah, I can stretch the shoulder. Now, then relaxing for a second, we can turn the palms forward and bend the elbows and drop down. And just imagine all of the tendons and nerves and muscles that cooperate. But turn your attention inward and feel that. Feel that flow, the resistance to gravity when you lift, just bending the elbows with open hands and then dropping them. Then bending the elbows, turning the hands, pushing, reaching up, and moving out. So all of these sensations get grouped together into a routine. Bending the elbows, turning the wrists, extending the palms, lifting the palms, turning the palms out, and can you stay with the feeling in the hands as you lift, twist, push, turn, lift, up. Again, elbows bent, wrists, the tension's on the wrist. Press, feel the heel of your hand, feel the tendons that support your fingers pointing up. Turn the palms so the fingers are pointing in, and there's new sensation. Lift, press out, and just relax down, feeling that release, 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 release. Then gravity absorbs the weight of your arms and gently pulls from the shoulder sockets. Your hands are heavy. There's sensations of real softness and release. And then agency, activation, turning the palms forward, lifting, twisting, pressing, turning, lifting, pressing. Hold for a second and press and press and press. All the sensations that support that idea, and then release. Lift, turning, pressing, turning inward, lifting, pausing. Don't press, just release down, a little bit down. Different sensations. Press and then release. Coming to stillness. You can lift the hands and face the palms upward as if we're holding two platters. They may have a cheese spread or cookies or some vegan treat on these two platters, and just turn and feel the sensations in the spine. Feel the sensations across the palm of the hand. We have the intention to keep the hand steady and not let these imaginary plates tip. And that pulls certain tendons and ligaments in a certain way. Then we throw that idea out, just drop that idea, turn the palms down, and turn. Whole new set of sensations. The palms feel very different facing down because they pull tendons in a different way, but the spine is still activated. The hip has to come back on one side and release forward on the other in order to get a good twist. The feet are planted in the earth. There's sensations in the toes, in the heels, in the instep, up the calf muscles and the shin bone, and then pausing and dropping the hands. We can turn again without the arms extended at all, and it's a subtly different operation. It's a flow again. The hips have to pull and push. We can go back to the shibashi thing where we push with one hand, pull in and push with the other hand, and create a flow this way. All the different sensations in the shoulder socket and the shoulder blade in the back, the wrists as we turn, we extend and turn, pushing forward. All up and down the spine, there's subtle adjustments along all the different vertebrae. And then coming to stillness, dropping the hands, surrendering to gravity, soft knees, soft shoulders, chin level, with no gestures. There's still a flow of sensation. This living organism. So our relationship now with the body is having brought mindfulness to it and all the possible ways the spine or the hips could be constricted and holding. We've created a flow to relax all those muscles. And they're saying thank you. Sink, open to the side, come down, feel that sense of agency, gathering experience on the sensation level paying attention to the mood, the openness, the energizing factors, the relaxing factors of a simple circle with one arm and then the other. Moving down the center, opening 2 circles to the side, coming down the center. Those round, soft movements create a new relationship with the body, and the body says, thank you. Stillness, but aliveness, a river of sensation. So, July 18th, we'll play games like that, and then sit, and then listen to poetry, and talk about the changing of the moods and new ideas and the gestures and relaxing and letting the relationship with the body become foremost to see what happens. Practice that from 9 o'clock till 1 o'clock. So thank you for your attention. Hope to see you on the 18th, whatever it was, 17th, 18th. I just went blank. 18th. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm having to do a little adjusting because I turned the computer screen around to face the YouTube camera. And it'll be better now, I think.
We were simply moving our hands, but it got so complicated with all these cameras and microphones.
Yeah. There. Well,
All right.
ooh, it's a little far on this. There. Well, thank you, Jim. Alrighty. I want to ask, I'll put my glasses down over here. What happens when I do this? Did that do anything? Jim?
Well, I'm not sure what we're...
Did anything change when I did that? No. Okay.
In terms of sound or vision?
Visual. No. Okay.
I don't think so.
I think I'm going to cancel that. Okay. Okay. There's a picture that I want to have, and I want to take the moment it will take to find it. I thought I had it, and then it vanished. Huh. Isn't it nice that we don't have to become impatient, as they call it? because of it not being all set right away. There it is. Good. All right. Now, let me just see. Okay. Good. I want to thank, first off, I want to thank you for being here. This wouldn't happen without you. I wouldn't get to play this role without you. And it's an extraordinary privilege to get to play this role. And I understand the role to be to remind us what's important, to remind us about the Dharma, to share with you what I understand about what's really important. Some of you may not have heard I've got a lot of stories about Ruth Denison, several of them that are very poignant and I repeat with some frequency. One is in 1978, 80 something, when Ruth Denison surprised me with a Dharma transmission ceremony at Brighton-Bush. And we were in the middle of the circle, and she was a great ceremonialist. She could make a ceremony out of anything. And I need to let the dog out. She's making that particular sound which says, better let her out. That's not what Ruth said. All right, Dobby. Out you go. There. Anyway, Ruth pulled me close during the ceremony and said with some intensity, "Don't think this makes you better than anybody else. All this means is you have to practice twice as hard as any of your students and do your best to keep your ethical trip together." I think of that as the secret teaching, right? And there was another time, some years later, when she came to Portland, and there were maybe 35 people there. And we were all sitting on the floor, and she was walking around patting our heads and doing her Ruth thing. And one of the women asked her, "Why did you choose Robert to be a teacher?" And she came over and patted my head and said, "Well, it wasn't because of any great spiritual attainment, but he loves the Dharma. And I knew he would grow into the role." And that's really beautiful, I think. And I think that's true. That's true for us. It's not about spiritual attainment. It's about devotion to what's really important. And learning to love each other and ourselves. And I have another thank you, which is to Ajahn Sumedho, who, if you've not encountered him, oh, look, I think there must be stuff on YouTube. But he's maybe my favorite living teacher right now. And there's his collected works exist. They put them together at Abhayagiri. If you looked up Ajahn Sumedho collected works, and they'll send them to you for a donation or for free. And it's 5 volumes of his writing. And you can enter it anywhere. and just read him. It's incredibly nourishing. And the thing I want to really thank him for is when he gave Dharma talks when I was around with him a little bit, he didn't hesitate to pause. He stopped on retreats sometimes when he was giving Dharma talks. He would stop for 5 or 10 minutes. And it's an antidote to this is a performance and it has to be really polished. And there better not be any screw ups in the audiovisual. And there's a certain tyranny of that now. And that's in every sphere of our lives. You know, if you don't play a song like the person who originally played it with all their, or sing a song or have the voice of somebody or other, then you need to be ashamed to play in public, to be musical in public, or to perform a poem in public, or because we're supposed to be so perfect, so polished, as opposed to just ordinary humans. So I wanted to thank Ajahn Sumedho. So I started today with that quote from my friend Eric Kolvig, that samsara is broken and there's no fixing it. I spent a little while this morning, I exposed myself to the news. Through the lens of the news, things are bad. And they're getting worse. COVID's going nuts here in the US. Our political system is completely crazy. And I know through my role and my friendships, I know of people who are being hospitalized today, and I have a relative who was just diagnosed with inoperable liver cancer. Dukkha, birth, sickness, old age, decay, death. Having experiences you don't want to have, not having experiences you do want to have, being with people you don't want to be with, not being with the person you want to be with. It's easy to kind of glibly rush through those, but to think of them for a moment. Birth, suffering, sickness, old age, decay. I used to never quite get the decay one. It seemed, well, you know, I'm not rotting in my shoes right now. Well, that's actually not true. The systems that are breaking down, I have discovered, and it may be from the brain surgery when they made the big hole in my head, but my sense of smell is really way less than it was. In fact, I went out, I had a fancy dinner not so long ago, and I thought, why get this fancy food? The best part of the dinner was the salad dressing. The other, the fancy thises and that's, without the sense of smell, they're just texture. That's interesting. I'm going to try to be more careful with what I order, which is I think I like to order things that I can taste. Sickness, old age, decay, and then there's death. So what's the point? Really? I'm also discovering that in the term dukkha, unsatisfactory, that which is difficult to bear, stress, as Achan Tanisiro says. Nothing really quite does it, I discover. I have tried and tried and tried and tried, but even the most pleasant things come and disappear like that. Poof, gone. My daughter Tara, the traveler, takes after her father. She'll be home the 20th, I guess. She gets home from New York. And she'll be here 3 or 4 days. And then she's going to go quarantine herself with friends on their land and spend a couple of weeks or 2 weeks, 3 weeks there and then look for work. But she may wind up going somewhere else to travel again, to teach, to be a nurse again. There's no landing and permanence. It's coming and going. So there's a point I want to get to here. Again, there's a polarity. On the one hand, there's these practices that lead us to accepting, relaxing, opening, till we realize everything's really okay. Because none of this is permanent. There are those who say we wake up from sleep, we wake up from a dream in sleep, and we're awake. And then there's another waking up, which is to wake up from the fact that this too is a dream. There's nothing permanent. But I did a Tibetan exercise years ago now. They had us very carefully write down, or think about it, a memory of something that happened in the last 2 weeks. And then to write down the details of a particular memory, of a particular dream that we had. And then to take them both into meditation and realize there's no difference between either of them. They're both a fantasy, they're a story in the present moment, and they're gone. Or they're present when we think of them. So, I believe it, I practice this. Before I went on my little camping trip, for a 4-day retreat, as it turned out, I was very contracted. A lot of tension, taking things pretty seriously. I couldn't enter a state of ease with much depth. And then I did my retreat, and I spent a lot of time just being and meditating, and there was some sadness and some anger and more opening and some good sleep and then rest. And then it became clear to me again, I don't know how to say this, but the deep sense that everything really is okay. There isn't a problem. The world is as the world is, and it's always been strife and conflict and war and class struggle and racial catastrophes and on one pole, the pole of liberation, to be able to tune our consciousness to the place where it's okay to relax is a great freedom. It is the great freedom. I'm reminded, I lost this, I had an old VHS videotape of, probably exists, I should look for it. Daniel Ellsberg and Ram Dass were set to have a series of 3 90-minute conversations about activism and anti-nuclear work and so on. And they got to a place in the first session where Ram Dass, and Daniel Ellsberg was very intense. And he's the fellow who released the Pentagon Papers. And Ram Dass said something like this. So Daniel, I can see you're really intense and angry about this. Well, it's very important to me to be able to acknowledge the perspective where the people in the White House are us. We're all one. And if all the nuclear weapons were set off all at once, and it would be the end of humanity, what's wrong with that? And poor Daniel Ellsberg just totally flipped out. And they ended very soon thereafter, and they never did the other 2 sessions. Because it was not within his capacity to imagine, to even to have that thought. One more thought on that side was I forget the context, but there's an old minister who, can't remember, a long time ago, an old minister who said something similar. He said, well, I've been a minister for a large congregation for 35 years, and I have buried hundreds and hundreds of people. And sometimes I think, maybe, what if they set off the bombs? And what if we all died in one flash? We're all going to go anyway, and might it not be a relief to all go together? I mean, these are heretical thoughts, but they speak to a certain truth. So that's one polarity, the polarity of liberation. And there's another polarity, which is, here I am, here you are, here we are in our lifetime, and how shall we behave? How shall we comport ourselves? What shall we do to make life more livable for ourselves and other people, and to create a more just and caring society? And what shall we do to prepare ourselves to create a body-mind, to create a personality or a structure within ourselves that actually is capable of waking up, to have the realization of our freedom? Oh, this was a different moment in time. Jennifer has a little action figure of Bernie. So, way back 2,600 years ago, the Buddha appeared, brilliant fellow, did a lot of personal exploration, and discovered a way home. He discovered a way to freedom. And he then spent the rest of his life teaching that. 40-some years. And he wasn't engaged in politics, though he did consult with kings, and he did try to intervene in wars. There was one story of a war where the city of his birth was completely devastated. 60,000 to 80,000 people killed because of his family of origin had sent a commoner to a cousin as a young girl bride rather than a princess. And so this guy took it seriously and went insane. So what the Buddha taught was the Eightfold Path. A way to face what's happening in our lives so that we can live much more happily and with less stress. And also that when we act in the forms of activism, we actually do more good than harm. So I want to talk today about the aspect of the Eightfold Path, which is wise effort. And there are so many efforts we can do. We can effort to become physically fit. We can effort to stay flexible, which is a good thing. These are good things. We can effort to become, we could effort and become great scholars of the Pali Canon, which would have some good benefits to it. We can effort and develop various intellectual skills. We can develop political skills. We could effort to become very active in terms of the activist approach. And we could effort to any number of meditation strategies. We could effort to learn how to leave our bodies. There's a fellow on, this happened 2 or 3 times with Ruth and my times with her, fellow who reported that during the meditation I left my body and I was in the corner of the room. He went over and she went over, and it was like she didn't do this really, but it was like she took him by the ear and said, left your body. Can you get into your body for 30 seconds and stay there? We can do meditations of tremendous visualizations and fantasies and things, but what the Buddha taught was there are some efforts that are really crucial for living a happy life and for setting ourselves free ultimately. And they are the efforts to, and I've got a picture here. I forgot a piece. Hang on. Let's go back to this first. Before I go to the wise effort, I want to go to this, sharing my screen. Boom. Have you got the droplet? I can't tell here what is highlighted. Somebody tell me, please.
It hasn't engaged. It just says Robert has started screen sharing.
Oh, it's trying now. How about now?
There's the droplet.
Okay. I'm me. I love to be me. I've got to be me. The song of the self. I, me, mine. This is a self-portrait. And it's the self-portrait of each of us. And we take this very seriously, and we must, because we are here, we're born in these separate bodies. But what's really true about this? It's only here for a nanosecond, and then it will go plop back into the all. What if during this lifetime we can do something, or some things, and not do some things, which will, potentiate having the experience in this lifetime of being this rather than this. Right? That's the journey, I think. And there certainly is next to nothing in popular culture that emphasizes, hey, let's train the mind such that we can really recognize our complete interbeing. There's some, but it isn't certainly what's taught in school very much. So, wise effort. First, let me maybe just put this up here for a moment. I wish this was clear to me, which it has. Does this have a wise effort up now, or does it have...
That's back to the blank screen.
It's back to what?
It says Robert Beatty has started screen sharing.
Ah, it's slow. Okay. Huh. How about that? How about now?
Eightfold Path.
Okay, thanks, Jim. So just to give you some orientation, there are the 8 facets of the Eightfold Path: wise view, worldview, intention, speech, action, livelihood, wise effort. It's part of the meditative component of the Eightfold Path. And then wise effort. Have you got wise effort now, Jim?
Not yet.
Sharing, bring your shared window to the front. Okay, I'm going to stop share. The This program is helpful but not perfect. Okay, I think that might have it now.
Wise effort.
Yay, okay. So, wise effort. The Buddhist model says it's kind of like a gardening model. What will set us free is training the heart mind, training our capacity to be conscious. And then to break it down so that it becomes more workable, there are tools, one of which is wise effort, and it's suggested that there are 4 essential wise efforts. There is the effort to, I can make this bigger. Whoops. The effort to eliminate unwholesome mental states. So in meditation, we are restraining and eliminating certain states. The effort to keep unwholesome states from arising. They're not always there, and the effort is to prevent them. The effort to bring wholesome states into being, and once they're in existence, to maintain these wholesome states. And I'm sorry to those of you on YouTube that you can't see these. I don't have the technology to make that happen yet. Okay.
Could you just say that again for the YouTube folks? Those 4 options.
The 4 options.
Keeping,
Yep.
keeping unwholesome.
Yep. I'm going to go through them in significant depth here as well. So the 4 options are, I'm going to come back to you for a moment. It'd be nice to be in the same room. This is frustrating. So, this mind is pretty wild. How's yours? It can get filled with the 5 hindrances. It can get filled with stories about how life is and how I'm a victim and this and that. And it can get angry and full of self-pity, and it can do all these things. And the essence of this teaching is that none of these mental states are who we are. These are filters that could put in front of that which we are, and then we wind up in our personality taking them very seriously. So, 4 efforts. First, when you notice that some unwholesome, some mental state based in greed, hatred, or ignorance, when one of those is in the ascendance, restrain it. If you're angry, you don't have to act out. You don't have to harbor that anger. It's not about repress it, don't have it, but it's notice it. Oh, this is what's happening in the weather. I think I can maybe take a step toward being less identified with this. So we restrain unwholesome states. That's the first. The second one is, once they're restrained, we do our best to keep them from bursting out again. And then the other one is to bring into being wholesome states, to plant the plants you want. And then once they blossom, to keep them going, to really take care of them. It really is a gardening metaphor. And we are an ecological system. Our body-mind is subject to the rules of the universe, and they are ecological. So I want to go through the list here and see if I hope this is helpful. Okay. So I want to get rid of this one, or go to this one. Eliminate unwholesome states. And I'm going to pop this open. Did that open? I think it did. All right. We develop, as we meditate, I like this here, a keen sense of the danger of unwholesome thoughts. They keep us entangled in suffering. So as our meditation opens up the capacity to perceive what's happening, we practice mindfulness, And there are antidotes to unwholesome states. I'm not going to go there for now. Or we can ignore them. We can turn the mind away from thoughts that are stimulating the thoughts and feelings. We can replace unwholesome states with their opposites. If we're let's say we're very busy, lost in desire of some kind, maybe sexual desire. We can reflect on the impure nature of the body. There's all we have to do is reflect upon the object of sexual desire minus a mere quarter inch of skin. Or, that's very Buddhist, or reflect on the liver, for instance. If we're caught up in anger and ill will, we can reflect upon love. If we're caught up in restlessness and agitation and worry, we can focus on simple meditation objects and calm the mind down. If we're in sloth and torpor, we can look into a bright light or imagine a bright light or walk or resolve, I'm gonna put some energy into this. And the antidote for doubt is good friends. And lastly, we meet the unwholesome thought in face-to-face combat. Now, I hope I'm not trying to cover too much here, but I want to I'll come back to you for a second. How about restless? We'll just take restlessness, agitation, and worry. Do you worry? Some of us are really caught up in worry. What about worry? Well, we can use substances and maybe worry less for a few minutes. We can distract ourselves, or we can go into meditation and we can use our breath to develop a home base, concentration spot, and then we can time and again snip the worry. Worrying, thank you for sharing, back to the breath. Worrying, thank you for sharing, back to the breath. Worrying, thank you for sharing, back to the breath. Or let's say it's anger or greed. We can snip, 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 snip. And we're learning how to not take them so seriously, that we don't have to act on the basis of them. Could you give me a nod? Is that making sense? That's a strategy. Yeah. Okay. So that's one of the reasons we meditate, which is to learn how to restrain unwholesome states. And people often say, "Oh, I didn't have a very good meditation," or usually it said, "I had a good meditation today," which means that it was calm and quiet and pleasant. Well, that's true. Those are good meditations. But on the other hand, there are those times when you're struggling hard to keep your seat, and maybe there's a whole lot of sadness coming up or something, and we learn how to keep our seat. And every time we awaken to the fact that we're in one of those, quote, unwholesome states, it's another moment of freedom from it. Okay, going back in. And this is by necessity a rather quick view through this. Keeping unwholesome states from arising, they're not always there. The effort to prevent them. And this is a very interesting piece of the practice. It's called guarding the senses. And let's say you're sitting in meditation and the mind has been quite restless, and in fact it's becoming less restless now. It's becoming calmer. And in fact, it gets to being quite quiet. To simply abide there with the breath and notice when the mind begins to turn toward a worry or toward a desire. And so in guarding the senses, we notice when any of the five hindrances are beginning to emerge, and they're very easy to snip. And we're watchful over the senses, and we watch our internal responses to sense experiences. So we become a person who can modulate what happens with the mind because of our meditation. And there's another one here, avoiding the triggers. I bought a package of Mother's Taffy biscuits yesterday, actually, and it wasn't a wise move because I love those things. And if you don't want to eat Mother's Taffy biscuits, don't have them in the house. And that's true with all kinds of things, that we can structure our lives such that we don't have to, we won't be overwhelmed by our compulsions and addictions if we simply don't have them around. So, this is about, coming back to you, this is about learning to calm the mind, to be in the present and be satisfied and stable. And then unwholesome thoughts will arise. Greed, hatred, and ignorance will come marching in. The neurotic patterns will come marching in. However, if we've developed a mind which can be somewhat calm and present, then we can nip them in the bud. Going back in. How's my time? Oh, good. I think I can do this. Eliminate the wholesome, keep wholesome. Okay. Bring wholesome states into being. What are the wholesome states? Here's the 7 enlightenment factors: mindfulness, curiosity, persistence, joy, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. Bringing love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, the Brahma Viharas, into being. Cultivating patience, generosity, wisdom, morality, truthfulness, and renunciation. Wholesome states. So, we call this the practice of mindfulness. We're bringing into being mindfulness and concentration, and we're curious about it, and we do this with persistence, and joy and tranquility and equanimity emerge. So we are cultivating these wholesome states, and we are learning to uproot and suppress these unwholesome states. And then once wholesome states come into being, maintain them and stabilize them. Oh no, what does this do if I click on this? I wonder. I haven't been in this one for a long time. I don't think it's doing anything. I'm going to stop sharing back. So that was rather quick on the wholesome states. I want to tell you a story. I always think of it when I talk about skillful effort. It's a long time ago, 10 years. I was on my way to visit my daughter Tara when she was in college in California. And I woke up feeling bad, yucky. And I got to the airport, and I think I had a coffee, and I got on the little plane, and then I sort of fell asleep and went into a sort of a reverie. And when I woke up, I was in this loving kindness state. Everyone was so beautiful. And my heart was so open. I felt so grateful that the pilot was up in the cabin and in the cockpit. And I got to Fresno, I think, where I had to change planes. And as I got off the plane, I had a fantasy that I was going to go inside. I'd bought a Time magazine, and I thought, I'm going to go in and read Time magazine, which I rarely do. But then I got into the airport, and I was in this incredibly positive state. And so I realized, wait, I've stumbled into a very beautiful loving kindness state. Why not maintain it? And so I spent 2 hours walking through the airport, careful that I didn't offend people, because you could you look at them with great love and they might misunderstand. But I had 2 hours of that, and it persisted more, and I got to where I was going. And it was just a marvelous loving kindness experience that I persisted in, and I further developed it during that time. And then on the way home, I was anticipating, hoping that same experience would happen, but it had been a challenging time in the dorm. And on the way home, the grouch was there, contracted, and looking at the airport, all these people competing for my seat. And it was so clear, though, that it was a mental state. And so then I went to my spot, sat down, and then I did the practice of restraining that irritability and that judgmentalism, and coming back to my breath and doing loving kindness meditation, supplanting it, replacing it with something else. Now, one thing that people often misunderstand with this is, oh, well, this is about repression. Don't have those bad feelings. And it's not that. Because one also turns toward, let's say you're feeling depressed or angry or hurt or judgmental, to have a stability have enough stability in your mindfulness of breathing and awareness, then you can turn toward those feelings of anger, irritability, hopelessness, despair, etc., and really open into them. And feel them. Where do they exist in the body? And open into them more and more and more and more and more. And then as we develop skill with this, we discover that they're not personal. They're just the weather. That's that other pole we move toward. So on the one hand, we're shaping our personality, we're working with our wholesome and unwholesome states. And on the other, we're simply relaxing into it and letting it be what it is. So, I'm hoping that this quick run through with this gives you a sense of the strategy, I guess it is, and the efficacy of having this toolbox of understanding of skillful effort. And so, we're not just sitting down, I'm going to meditate now and I'm going to make myself calm. Those are great training wheels. That's a great way to begin. But the goal isn't to learn how to be calm all the time. The goal is to learn how to be present with whatever's happening and then to make skillful choices toward the direction I want to go. What do I want to evolve into? And I'm living proof that we're really not stuck with the wounded, contracted, freaked out person that we came out of our family of origin with. And that we can, over time, become more loving and more kind and more generous. Still neurotic, still human, but we can become more... we can become better farmers. And we can determine the crop that we want to cultivate. And just to tie it into another thread, which is if we want to practice activism and to confront some of the inequities and I don't know what to call planetary climate change, but to confront some of the problems, to take a stand and work with some things, to do it from a place where we also simultaneously are working with our own consciousness to become more loving and have more equanimity. Then we can be effective in our activism and also leave behind us a trail of more goodness rather than our shadow side acting out. So there. That's the best quick portrait of that I can pull out for today. I hope it's helpful. And I'm open to questions, comments. Thank you for listening. It was a lot. Skillful effort.
Robert? This is Jim.
Hello, Jim.
You weren't here, you were on retreat, but it's really interesting to me to think back over the speakers that the group has heard in the last week. One of them Doyle talked about guarding the senses, which is part of your effort description. I talked about eliminating fear. That was eliminating unwholesome things, and not repressing it, but welcoming it and understanding it. And then Gary went into love as one of those factors that you could maintain with this technique and this opening and this opening. And then when Candle spoke, she just went right back to the core and said, I would like to investigate suffering. But the way she did it was not with a grasping, constricted mind, but a gentle probing here, gentle probing there, that suffering appeared. And so it all fit together into the arms of your talk today. So.
You suppose we're teaching the same model? Thanks, Jim.
Hey, Robert, I got a little overwhelmed by the sheer volume, and I wanted to ask, when you said the first under wise effort is to eliminate unwholesome states, you said states based on greed, and then I couldn't get it.
You've seen that. I have a Tibetan tanka in my office. You may not remember. There's a beautiful art piece that I bought in Kathmandu, and it has the 12 steps of dependent origination. At the center of it, there's a picture of a rooster, a snake, and a pig. And they are representative of the forces that drive samsara, the realms of birth and death. And they are greed, hatred, and ignorance. And greed is the I want, I want, I want, I want, I want. And hatred is the I don't want, I don't want, I don't want. And ignorance is I take these desires of wanting and not wanting to be a self. And I also ignore the fact that everything's impermanent, and there's no way that I can find a place of stability with greed. I mean, it would be so interesting. What would it be like to talk to Jeff Bezos or whatever, and these other multi-billionaire people? What are they doing? How utterly absurd to hold such wealth and not use it for good. There's a madness. There's an ignorance there. So those are that's the three.
Thank you for that clarification. Those seem to be pretty core.
They are the core.
Good. That's what I wanted.
And greed, of course, is a whole continuum from I'm sitting here, I want more concentration. I want this to be different. I want another helping of this food, or I want my partner to be in this particular way, or the madness of being driven by lust. Addictions. Addictions, of course, work both poles, because on the aversion side, it's all the way from I don't like this mental state to I don't like this food to I don't like this state to such a degree that I really have to alter my state because this state is not bearable. And then we get into the whole addictive cycle. We can make it complicated, but I think at the simplest level, it really is simple and very functional, which is we're gardening. I want to cultivate mindfulness and love and compassion. and I really want to uproot greed, hatred, and ignorance.
Robert, this is Martha. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, Martha.
Hi. During this entire session, we live in a very rural area, or fairly rural area. During this entire session, which is not uncommon, especially on some beautiful Sunday mornings.
Could you move a little closer to your microphone, my dear? It's kind of faint.
Yeah. So
Much
can you hear me
better.
now?
Perfect.
Okay. We live in a semi-rural area that is a pretty diverse white area. And it's not uncommon on Sunday mornings for people to sort of celebrate their freedom with target practice. And during this entire session, there's been somebody about, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile away shooting off a semi-automatic weapon. And it's been this constant trigger for me, and I'm trying to just kind of feel my response to it. Anyway, I remember that you mentioned on your retreat that you experienced a lot of the same thing, and I just would love for you to speak to it a little bit, because there's nothing that can be done.
No.
It's legal. But to me, it's so symbolic of so much that that brings me incredible grief, about the state of the world, and it's gotten much worse in this time. It's bringing out everyone's fear, and
Right.
so there it is.
I had such an urge to hug you just then.
Yeah.
You said something really very important in that. That those sounds, that pop 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 sound, is symbolic of so much that's problematic right now and always. And it's not that the sound is symbolic of that. It's that your mind makes a symbolic meaning of it. Because as a sound, it's just a sound. But it is the sound of an AR-15 probably, and where I was outside Estacada, there was also machine gun fire. People have, altered these devices, and so what happens when that happens? There's a thought process, which is, I don't like it. I wish it would stop. And it's symbolic of this and that and the other. And so there's mental proliferation, we would call it papancha, that turns it into, it's very upsetting. And it can be different individuals. I don't want to get too far afield here, but in the year 2000, I fell in the mountains and I ruptured my quadriceps tendon on my right leg, completely tore it off my kneecap. And I was rescued by the Army in a Black Hawk helicopter. And actually, on my robertbeatty.com website, there's a little article called The Swish of a Horse's Tail. Fortune Changes Like the Swish of a Horse's Tail, which I wrote about that experience, which is worthy of reading. And anyway, my association with helicopters is I love them. This helicopter came up over the ridge and they lowered this terrific young man down. He stuck me in a thing, pulled me up and I was in the hospital in 20 minutes. It was incredible. If I were a villager, maybe my age, if I had been a villager in Vietnam and these helicopters came in and killed my family, there's no way I could hear a helicopter without it being scary and maybe have anger. And so it depends upon our conditioning as well. And 40 years ago, I went to India with my first wife. We took 25 students with us for a 5-month educational journey in India. Part of that was she had asked each young person, would you do a 10-day retreat? And they agreed. And we went to Bodh Gaya, right, the sacred center of Buddhism. The night we pulled up, there were big trucks. And the metro circus came to Bodh Gaya. And it was across the street from the meditation center. And from 7 in the morning till 2 in the morning, they played 5 or 7 different Indian show music tunes. And they had a piece of railway iron that they had on a cable and a ball peen hammer, and they held the microphone, ding, 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 ding. And this was our 10-day retreat with these beginning meditators. And it drove us insane. 2 of the guys came back over the wall from the outside, and they said they had found the central power supply and they knew how to disable it. And I had images of going out there and blowing them away with a shotgun, shooting the speakers. What it did for me, however, was it inured me to sound. That sound became sound, and my reactivity to it became my reactivity to it. And I was very grateful for that in the mountains, because I wasn't troubled by the shooting at all. When I thought about it, I mean, it's so tragic. Those men, I think they were all men, they go into the woods that are so beautiful, and they see nothing except targets and imagine this and that, and they're wasting their time, their beautiful, precious life. They're learning how to kill whoever they're imagining the enemy to be. And I've done a little target practice decades ago, and it's kind of neat. It's fun to be precise, and it's a skill. But all of this is a long way around to saying, to hear it as sound, it's guarding the senses. To hear it as sound, and to notice what the mind does in papancha. And that's where we set ourselves free of realizing that the papancha is not personal. It's just the mind creating images and stories. And I would suggest, I used to do this when I had small children, I would wear, those wax earplugs? Wax earplugs, and then I got some really good construction earphones, because sometimes the sound outside is so triggering that it's just too much. And so then you can create some silence for yourself in that way. Is that making sense? I covered a lot of ground there, but it's just sound.
Yeah, it's making sense. Especially, just the just sound part is, I guess I'm sort of, I go into investigating my response to it, and the sort of the suffering that comes along with that.
Yeah. That's a place where it's so useful to just, it's the world being the world. It's sometimes when we've done all we can to be in our activist role, in our role of generosity, supporting charities, when we've done everything we can and the world remains awful. There is another option, which is to realize, this is the way of the world. This is samsara. This is dukkha. Samsara is broken, and there's no fixing it. And am I going to suffer and bash my head against that? Or will I realize, I take refuge in the Dharma. And this is the way it is. And it's a dream. So we don't do that prematurely. People who do that prematurely are, they kind of live in la la land. But to do everything we can responsibly. Wouldn't it be nice to change the laws so that they can't be shooting automatic weapons on Sunday morning? That'd be really nice. Good luck with the Second Amendment it's like a religion in the U.S. So we can rail against that and struggle for the rest of our lives, or we can come to peace with it and realize, well, that is as it is.
I don't want to take too much more time, but I do I feel like there's this polarity between that and sort of feeling numb, you know.
This isn't being numb.
Yeah.
This is being really wide awake and ceasing to be reactive.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert.
You know, there's another perspective on this. Years ago, I had a student whose daughter injured her back, and she got one of those terrible skin-eating infections. I mean, one of those terrible things that come sometimes. And my student was, I don't know, a little younger than me, but she was pretty freaked out. And the whole family was freaked out, and then they managed to handle the infection, and she survived. And then a year or two later, and within the next few months, my student went to the Insight Meditation Society and was there for 18 months, where she did a lot of meditation, and she worked in the kitchen and so on. And she met lots of different teachers, and she really got deep into her meditation. And she came back, and she was back, and the daughter had another outbreak of this crazy infection, which is scary to me. And this time, however, she had done so much inner work that she could be present and deal with the hysterical response internally, but she didn't go to where the family expected her to go to, and they turned on her because they said, "You don't love her anymore. You don't love us," because she wasn't getting all emotionally upset. But it wasn't that she'd gone numb. She'd gone wise. She'd gone awake. She'd gone to realizing, she could die of this. And yes, and she will die of something. So therefore, I can love her and be close to her and be very present. But the hysterical response that she had, the freaking out, was not helpful. And it was for me a wonderful teaching on the power of the practice when it's taken to its depths. Because she was more effective. She was more loving and could make better decisions, and which I don't mean to say there isn't a time for decompensating and freaking out, and it's not like it's against that, but to have that as our go-to reaction might mean we want to really look carefully at it. Thank you for the question. It's your time. So 12:08. Anybody else before we go?
Hello, Robert. This is Patrick.
Hello, Patrick.
Hello. I'm in my garage. So I have a question that deals with the other side of that, rather than trying to accept sounds and accept stimulus, but more like welcome it and see it as a larger part of a context. And so sometimes when I'm meditating with you on a weekday morning, I'll reach a place of rest and calm within my mind, and then I'll take out my little earplugs, and I'll just gain this wide universal context about where I sit in the universe. I see the sun and the planets and the moon, and then I'm moving into the Western Hemisphere, and I'm visualizing also in my head, and I see the movement of people and the network of traffic and the movements of oceans and currents, and just it's spectacular, all the movement that's happening in the world. And then down to Portland, and then down to my little room, and I realize that I'm 1/6 billionth of humanity, but I exist only on the skin of a little blue dot in a universe that's so huge we don't even know how big it is, and we're not even in the middle of it. And gaining that kind of, it's like a state of context, that I find deeply fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a place in the Dharma where they talk about that in a little more spiritual terms, or am I just totally off the reservation here?
Off the reservation is funny. It's a wonderful visualization. It's a oneness sort of visualization.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Okay. All right.
And
I-
if you were to be careful driving in that state.
I'll ride up in the ocean. Well, sometimes you've long talked about sort of a desire to shelter yourself from the news, and other people talk about it here. I don't want to receive it like an open spigot, but I don't think that it's something to limit oneself from the world, because it is the world. This is the environment we live in. I struggle with that, and versus the innate, the ornate interior living room that we are setting up within our own beings in this practice. So I struggle with the balance between those two things.
There are people who have anxiety disorders, and there are people who had fathers who were capricious, violent, inconsistent, and malicious. And for some of them, to turn on the news and to see someone being those things sets off such a response, it is of no help to watch the news. And that's an extreme sort of case. And so if what we're doing makes it so we cannot remain in balance within ourselves, then removing the irritants can be really important.
You have to be in a state of balance before you can consider the larger context. Is that what I'm hearing you saying?
Yeah, and for many of us, I just felt really teary for a moment. I want to be careful not to present it as though I've somehow arrived, but there were years, decades, when simply treading water and trying to get my own act together was as much as I could manage. Really, that healing my own wounds and learning how to be activist without getting lost. It takes a lot of work to get to help ourselves be in that place, and we need to help each other with it. But that sounds like a lovely visualization. I do a loving kindness visualization like that, where I open and open and open and open, and it's lovely, and it's real in its own way, and to root it in mindfulness and being able to be in the present moment with the person you're talking to right now or the task, that's also very important. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
This whole thing is important to me. Thank you.
Great. I enjoyed going with it. I enjoyed going with you on it for the few moments you described it. It was nice. And it's true. I mean, the universe is vaster than we can imagine, or it's. They pointed the Hubble telescope, I think it was the Hubble, maybe it was one of the radio telescopes, at the darkest place in the southern hemisphere where there's no stars. What did they find? Billions of galaxies. It's ridiculous. And my toothache is important. Still. All right. Anybody else sitting with something before we go? John McClelland, are you really sitting at the beach, or is that one of those backgrounds? It looks so nice.
That's one of those backgrounds that my son put on.
Oh, it really creates greed in me. I want to be there. Thanks.
He's the one thing. I had nothing to do with it. Thanks, brother.
A warm beach with nothing to do. Well, dear beautiful people, thank you for coming today. Just occurred to me, if you have questions, it's not likely I could necessarily respond to email questions. I'm so overwhelmed with that kind of thing. But I might be able to bring the questions back to here or to the day, the morning meditations. So, and I might be able to respond individually sometimes. I don't want to set it up so that I then disappoint people. I hate doing that. I create this sense of easy availability, and then I get overwhelmed. So thanks for coming. I really hope this was helpful, and may we all suffer less and therefore be more loving. So I see Aaron there with a little person. Shall we do it? Let's do it. Oops, I forget. Where am I here? Participants. Get lost in the controls. Unmuting all. Ready? May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Well, that was pretty wild. Have a lovely Sunday. Bye-bye, dear friends. Thanks for coming.
Robert. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
This is the Earth. Funny.
Okay, I'll use the ones that.
It's fun listening in on other people's lives, isn't it? All right. Goodbye, dear friends.
Good day.
Bye-bye. Goodbye, dear friends on Facebook and YouTube. I hope you have a fine day.